great wife. But they're two great people. And as you know, last week, Michael contributed $6,250,000,000. And this is just something that's so special. So many people are in love with that. He understood it right from the beginning. It was his idea, and he understood it right from the beginning. Could you give maybe just a little description of why you loved it for such a long period of time? And we were able to get it through the great big beautiful bill, basically. That's how what gave us the authorization to do it. Michael, please.
Yeah, absolutely, sir. So, when we first heard about this idea, the idea was that the government would give $1,000 to a newborn baby in an account that they would own, and it would go in essentially the S&P 500 and compound. And when the child becomes 18, they could use that money to go to college, to buy a home, to start a business, to continue saving. And I thought that was a great idea. I thought that'd be great if companies matched the government's contribution, which we're doing. A lot of the companies around the table have committed to doing that. And also thought about this is, wow, this is going to be like a platform for families and communities and philanthropists to contribute to those accounts. And so we originally started with the idea of, well, what if we gave some money to all the kids in our home state of Texas, right? We thought that would be a nice thing to do.
It's still a lot.
Yeah, it is. 1 out of 10 new kids in America born in Texas.
It's pretty good.
Happen to be a fan of the state of Texas. But anyway, we thought about it some more. We thought, this is going to be something really special. We have a foundation. It focuses on children. It's been around for 26 years. And we said, well, why don't we go bigger? And so we talked about it. And, now that the Investment America Act is a law, which that in itself is a incredible thing that occurred. It does create a platform, and we were super happy to announce that we would give $250. We arrived at $250 because next year will be the 250th birthday of America and 25 million children. We thought that was a nice thing to do because it would include most of the children that are 10 and under, that are not part of the government program, that live in zip codes where the median income is less than $150,000. And that was also an important part of our contribution. And I do believe there will be a number of other large gifts announced. I've already spoken with a few that will be announcing gifts at the state level, and more to come.
It's amazing, and it's amazing the vision you have, but that's why you're so successful, frankly. And to think that Michael started off with not a lot of money, I would say, right? Not too much, like very little. And he can give a gift of $6,250,000,000, and I know he said he's going to do a lot more. It's pretty amazing. It's really a beautiful thing to watch. So great for our country. So we have the Trump accounts are doing really well, and it's become, I have to tell you, just everyone's talking about them, beyond what I would have even thought. And it's going to make some young people relatively very wealthy. And in some cases, I mean, they could really be off to a great start. So some people have had that advantage and some people haven't, but it's a wonderful thing. Thank you to you and your beautiful wife. Thank you very much. So it's a pleasure to welcome so many brilliant minds and distinguished business leaders back to the White House. I love these brilliant minds, including Michael Dell of Dell Technologies, who makes a great product. And I want to thank him for what he's done, what we just discussed, the accounts. We also are grateful to be joined by Enrique Lores of HP. So thank you very much, Enrique. Great job you're doing. Antonio Neri of HP Enterprise. Thank you very much. What's the difference between HP and HP Enterprise?
We focus on the cloud security network
Good.
and large systems.
The cloud's good. People have done very well with the cloud. That's great. Arvind Krishna of IBM, who's actually become, I would say, a legend. The job he's done. He's taken the stock from a rather low price to a very nice price. I won't say high because I'm sure you're going to say it's going to go up a lot more. Right? So I can't say a high price, but he took IBM into a new stratosphere that nobody, I think, saw. If you go back to before when he took over the company, nobody would have even imagined that you'd be able to do what you've done. So congratulations. We got a good friend. Cristiano Amon of Qualcomm, and thank you very much. Congratulations and success. I know a lot about your company. You've done amazing. An executive director of the Technology CEO Council, Bruce Melman. So, thank you very much. I think that these people know each other. We're going to be talking a little bit about technology today, and we'll take a few of your questions about technology. I'm sure you probably won't have too many of those questions. You'll be asking about some other things, right, Bruce? Our administration is committed to total dominance in technology. Right now, we're leading artificial intelligence by a lot. And you look at what's going up, and we're writing rules, regulations. We want to keep it at the federal government level, so it's simple for the companies, very important, frankly. And I think we're pretty well committed. I spoke to some of the senators today, and I think we're committed to do that. We want to make it as simple as possible, as easy, because you're competing with some very big sources, and we want to stay number one by a lot. We're leading the world in building new data centers and new semiconductor and chip manufacturing facilities and new capacity for AI. And we're unleashing all of the forms, literally all forms of energy and natural gas and oil to clean, beautiful coal and safe, reliable nuclear power. And I'm giving them approval to, when they build these massive plants that cost $50 billion. You know, it used to be that for $50 million, you could build a nice little shopping center. But for $500 million, you can build one of the biggest, most beautiful centers. And now they're talking about $50 billion. So explain that one. These buildings are nobody, there's never been anything. There's never been anything like that. So you're all involved in that. It's pretty amazing. 1 year ago, our country was considered dead by many leaders throughout the world. And now we have what's called the hottest country anywhere in the world. We're the hottest country in the world right now. 10 months took us. I thought it was going to take longer, Michael. Really, I didn't think we were going to have this success this soon. We have over $18 trillion being invested. So much of it by, like you're in for a lot. What's the number that you're looking at? 150 billion. That's good. I don't know, Michael, am I allowed to ask you? You already gave 6,250,000,000. Do you have you stated a number that you're at for investment, future investment?
Well, if I think about all the, investment that we make with the American companies that are adding capacity, particularly around semiconductors, it's several $100 billion.
I think that's right. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
It makes the 6 billion sound very, very small. That's very good. Antonio, what about you guys? What about you and Enrique? How's that going?
Well,
have you announced a number or anything?
No, I'm actually happy to share with you. Over the next few years, we're going to invest an additional 3.5 billion building secure manufacturing. We build the largest supercomputer for the United States government that supports both the DoD and DOE. So in the next 18 months, we're going to build the largest 5 supercomputers that will keep the United States ahead of the game, both in life science and AI, but also to keep ahead for me and the entire staff at the national security level.
Great. Are you doing that separately? Are you doing that together or separate?
No, we are totally separate company.
Totally separate, right?
From our side, we invest in the US about $18 billion per year. So if you look at the next 5,
That's right.
it will be close to $100 billion. And we are going to be investing in AI at the edge, not only on data centers, but how to make AI available to customers in PCs, in headsets, in devices that they will be using every day. Which is
So it's
the
over
next
100
frontier.
over $100 billion.
Yes.
And you're doing well, HP is doing really well.
Yes.
That's great.
We're competing hard with Michael, but we're doing well.
Are you direct competitors?
Yes.
You
That's
are.
it. That's why they're on different sides of the table, sir.
The old days would say, why didn't you make a deal? I guess now it's not so easy to make.
We
a
can
deal.
have an arm wrestling match now.
Yeah,
So-
right. And Cristiano, you've been amazing, right? The company with the investments. How are you doing with
We're doing
investments?
great. I think, Mr. President, you have a great decision. I think when you drove our company to continue to be innovating, and I think we're doing very good within, in addition to doing phones, I think we're now, our chips are going to every car company in the world, all of the car companies. We're entering into the robotics. There's a lot of growth in robotics and the data center. New smart glasses going to be the future of mobile devices. Industrial, I think a lot of the drive towards manufacturing the country is driving a lot of technology for smart manufacturing. We're making chips for that. So I think we're very excited. And I think like Michael, I think the number of industries our chips are being enabling is driving hundreds of billions of dollars investments in. And most important for us, semiconductor manufacturing is very important. So we are going to be customer of the fabs that are being built in the United States by TSMC and Samsung. So
That's
we're
good.
just going
Yeah,
to
that's
get going
big stuff.
forward.
Yeah, those investments are very important, and we are all customers of those fabs.
Those two are my customers. So
Memory stuff, memory?
we don't do memory. We do other.
Who's the king of memory?
It's Micron. And
Micron's,
SK
yeah,
Hynix and
Micron's
Samsung.
another one doing very well. That's great. Yeah, I heard you're doing fantastically. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
The stock market has set a 51, think of this, 51 all-time record highs during the last 10 months. 51. You guys are big beneficiaries. You're setting the records, right? It's amazing. 51 times we've hit a new high. And in the history of our country, if you think about it, 51 times during the last 10 months. And Bruce, let me ask you, pull these people all together. How's it looking for technology?
A lot of local competition, but you'd rather be playing our hand than any other hand in the
Oh,
world.
yeah, I think so. We have a good hand right now, don't we? Joe Biden secured just really much less than $1 trillion of new investments in 4 years. And in 10 months, we secured more than $18 trillion. So 18 times the amount in 10 months what they did in 4 years. And they would have gone negative. They were heading toward negative. In other words, not $1 trillion, but it could have been 3 or 4 or 5 trillion less because people were leaving. So it was a big turnaround in 10 months. The $18 trillion, it's a record. There's never been a country that's gotten anywhere near that. In the Middle East, when I left the Middle East, we brought back $3 trillion and lots of Boeing airplanes, like 300. And Boeing gave me the award for the greatest salesman in the history of Boeing, which was a nice little award. I have a little plaque. The greatest, I think I've sold 1,000 Boeing planes. Can you believe it? Now all they have to do is make them. Okay, they got to make them, but they will. But we have made historic trade deals with the United Kingdom, China, Indonesia, Vietnam, Japan, the EU, Malaysia, Cambodia, El Salvador, Argentina, Ecuador, Guatemala, Switzerland, Liechtenstein, Thailand, and South Korea, and many others. And a lot of it's based on the November 5th election result, which was a massive victory. We won all 7 swing states, the popular vote. We won the electoral college by a landslide. We won counties. The counties, they do it. I don't know, to me, it's the most accurate of all in many ways. We're 2,700 counties against 525. That's pretty good, right, Cristiano? 2,700 against 525. 525. That's why when you see the maps, they're all red, except for 2 little blue lines on the right and the left side of the map. They're probably changing too. Americans are great builders, and in the Trump administration, America is once again a country where innovators get a green light. You have the greatest innovators in the world at this time, and representing a lot of their friends who are competitors and friends. But we're really on a big move to get rid of red tape so they can run their businesses and not have to wait 10 years for an approval. In the old days, getting some of these approvals for plants that are already being built would have taken 10, 15, even 20 years prior to rejection. You get rejected. People work 20 years and then you'd lose 5 to 4. And we're getting plants approved in a matter of weeks. The biggest plants ever built in a matter of weeks. For every new regulation, we're slashing more than 10 old regulations. So we're not allowing regulations unless they slash 10 old regulations. We did that in the first term, and we cut more regulation than any administration ever. In our first term, we have the all-time record. I think we're exceeding it here. In fact, now it's 1 in 24 is the number we're at. It's 1 in 10 you have to do, otherwise we're not letting you do it. But we're actually up to 1 in 24, so we get rid of 24 regulations for everyone. That's not a bad deal, right? And it's been very exciting, actually. But including, we're allowing 100 in the great big beautiful deal. We're allowing 100% expensing for capital expenditures, including investments in factories and equipment and structure. So including even structure. So that if Michael goes out and builds a factory, you can take it against tax immediately, the whole thing. You don't have to wait 38 years, do it over a 38-year period. And I think that's what made the first tax cut, which we, by the way, got extended in this tax cut. So, and you add it up, it's the biggest tax cut in the history of our country. But I think that the expensing factor, and it's good for 10 years too. I think that's the, maybe was the reason that so much growth was, there were other reasons, but so much growth was gotten in the first term. So earlier this year, I said that the challenges of our time demand a new spirit of patriotism and national loyalty in Silicon Valley, smart people, and from the whole technology sector. And that patriotism is on huge display here in this room with some of the most brilliant people. And I'd now like to ask Secretary Howard Lutnick to say a few words, and OSTP Director Michael Kratsios also say a few words. And I look forward to hearing from Michael a little bit about this subject. Cristiano, welcome. And Arvind, you'll say something, and I appreciate it. And anybody else wants to say a couple of words, feel free. Good job. So why don't we start with Howard, please?
So the key to America's success is the amazing innovators that we have. I mean, we have invented everything from the light bulb, transistor, GPUs. We are on the edge of everything. And we need to keep being on the edge. And the people at this table and this industry is why America's great. We need to build here. You know, for too many years, we innovated and we let everyone else build our stuff. And we just can't do it anymore. So with President Trump coming and winning the election on November 5th, we changed that, and now we're going to build it here. You've done everything you can. We've heard trillions and trillions of dollars of technology build coming home to America to protect and defend us and use our innovations here. You're driving interest rates lower, and you're going to continue to drive them lower. That makes it cheaper. It makes it more exciting to build here. You've blown out the regulatory deep state so that people can build here and do it fast. And the last thing is because of our investment in energy that drive down the cost of energy for all Americans, including the people who are building here, drive down the cost of energy. It's great for America. Put all of that together and you're going to see the greatest growth the United States of America has ever seen. You're going to see north of 4% next year, and then it's going to go up from there to 5s and 6s. This president's going to drive the greatest GDP growth led by tech sector coming home and driving growth.
Well, thank you. You know, one of the things I'd like to say just before going over to Michael, and this Michael, and then we'll have this Michael, all right? But one of the things I'd like to say is in the old days, when you announced really good results in this country, the stock market went up. And that's the way it should be. And we're going back to that. Because otherwise you can never really attain true greatness. In other words, GDP at 4. Oh, 4 is so high. Let's raise interest rates and kill it. And we're going to go back to the old days. When we announce great results, it doesn't mean we're going to raise interest rates and try and kill it. It means that instead of 4% GDP or 3%, which I said so wonderful, 3%, should be able to be 20 or 25%. I don't know why it can't be. You shouldn't kill it. And so we hope that if this country announces great results, because you're going to see great results over the next couple of years, all these plants, and I'm not just talking about AI, we have the biggest number of auto plants planned. Toyota just announced $10 billion in plants built, various couple of locations, few locations in the country, just a little while ago. They're all coming here. They're coming here because of tariffs, because they don't want to pay tariffs, but they're coming here because of the election and the mindset. But when we announce good results, the market should go up. Now it's when you announce good results, Michael, the market goes down because they say, oh, that means things are good. That means we're going to kill it by raising interest rates. I think it's really wrong. It should be the opposite of what it is now. It should be the way it used to be. We announce good results, the market should go up, and we should keep driving it up and have it keep going up and let it be much, much bigger, much, much better. And, you know, growth doesn't mean inflation. They're always afraid that, oh, we have, and if there is inflation, that's okay, then we can slow it down. But we should be able to do a lot better than 3 and 4. We're scheduled to be at 4%, which is pretty amazing because we have a, you know, deadhead Fed hair. I mean, this guy, the head of the Federal Reserve is a stiff. And, you know, you fight that. It's amazing. We fight that, and yet interest rates are going down, except with him, not too much. He did a rather, I would say, a rather small number that could have been double, at least double. And that's the other thing. I think the rates for the United States are always the lowest in the world, because without us, there is no world. Without this economy, there's no world. You know, you could go to some of these wonderful countries that you think are so great. Well, one of the reasons they're great is because we allowed them to get rich off of us. We didn't charge them anything. You look at some of the deals. I don't want to say use Switzerland as an example, but Switzerland paid almost nothing in terms of a tariff or a tax or whatever you want to call it, license. They paid nothing, and you know they're paying now. They're paying a fair amount. I had them at 39%, but I decided to be nice. I was nice, and I think they like us a little bit better. But the money you're talking about is enormous. Our country is a very rich country, but if we do well, the market should go up and the value of our country should go up. And if we do poorly, the market then should go down. It shouldn't be the opposite. And if we go up, we should encourage it to go up more. And those numbers, when you say, you know, 3% of GDP or 4% of GDP, they should be much higher. So, you know, I wanted to say it. I do say it. I believe it. And we have to get a mindset that when a country is doing well, you don't want to kill the growth. That's what they're doing. They kill the growth. I don't know if you guys even agree with that. They kill the growth because they're so afraid of inflation. But you can have tremendous growth without inflation. Everything goes up with the growth, but that's not inflation. So I think we can do much better than traditional numbers. And you see that. You see that with what we're doing. We're leading in everything. And now, and remember this, as far as prices are concerned, and they talk about affordability, I inherited the worst inflation in the history of our country. They say it was 48 years, but I say it was the history. What difference? It's 48 years, they were telling me. They said I was being inaccurate because I said the history. I think 48 years is a long time, but it's actually, I disagree. I think it's the history. So in the Biden administration, I inherited the worst inflation in the history of our country, for 48 years. And prices were very, very high. I brought the prices down. We had yesterday 3 states where oil was at $1.99 a gallon. How about that? And, you know, with these guys, it was $4, $4.50. In California, it was like $7 because that's a badly run state. But the price for oil and gas and everything else, the price of gasoline was $4.50, $5. And we just hit $1 and that we broke $2. I was looking forward to that. A couple of states, 3 states. And I will say that when that happens, oil and gas and energy is so big, it's so big a category. you don't even know what number two is. There is no number two. And when you have the prices coming down for energy like that, you've killed inflation and you're lowering prices. So I inherited very simply the highest prices in history, and I'm bringing them down really fast, led by energy. And when energy comes down, everything else comes down. But I've only been here a short while. And we gave them a beautiful, beautiful thing, and they destroyed it. They would have destroyed our country had they been allowed to stay. If we didn't win this election, if we had Kamala, who's the same as Joe, low IQ people, but if we had Kamala, as you would have a country that would be right now in ruins. I believe that 100%. Things would be in a state like nobody's ever seen before. Worse than anything you've ever imagined. Worse than 1929, in my opinion. Instead, we have the hottest country in the world, and we're going to keep it that way. But just to finish, we inherited high prices. We're bringing them down very rapidly, and we're bringing them down to very, very good levels. They'll soon be down at very good levels. Michael, please go ahead.
Absolutely. As everyone in this room probably knows very well, leadership in science and technology has been foundational to our economic and national security for decades. And because of the policies that you have championed and the private sector partnerships that you have made, America currently is leading the world in S&T, and it's benefiting all Americans every day. The one thing that I want to remind this group of, and many of you know, the president has been arguing for American leadership in AI well before ChatGPT was even invented. The president signed an executive order on artificial intelligence leadership in 2019, which set the stage for the revolution that we're seeing today. In the past year, we've built on that. We signed out the AI Action Plan in July of this year, which the president launched here in Washington, along with 3 EOs. And I know a lot of that effort is around creating a regulatory environment to allow for companies like yours to thrive, for the applications that you build to have the biggest impact on Americans every day. So thank you for everything that you do, and I know we're going to keep working together to make sure that America is the home for the next great technological discoveries.
Thank you, Michael. And Michael?
Thank you, sir. Well, look, we greatly appreciate the focus the administration has on lowering energy costs. And energy is the substrate of manufacturing at the industrial level and really an incredibly important input to the economy. We can't be competitive without a super low cost energy industry. And had a great meeting earlier today with Secretary Wright, and really appreciate all the work that he's been doing. This is, of course, incredibly important when it comes to AI, because it does consume a great deal of power. All the semiconductor manufacturing consumes a great deal of power. Another big area of focus for us is how we can take all this great AI technology, the AI stack of the innovative companies here in the United States, and sell that around the world. And I'd like to ask Arvind to speak a little bit more about this. Arvind?
Thank you. So, Mr. President, first, we really would like to thank you for everything you're doing for economic growth, as you said. I completely agree with you. Economic growth then drives a lot of other benefits to everything else. We also want to thank you for all the work you're doing on deregulation and making things easier for business to participate in that growth. Michael spoke of the AI stack. It's incredibly important that under the action plans that you have laid out and Michael Patriotism just spoke of, we really help promote the AI stack, which is not semiconductors only. Those are incredibly important, but it's semiconductors, it's software, it's the systems which many of us here build, and it is the software applications on top. The ability to take those to all our friends in countries, so all the friendly countries, is going to be very, very important. And we wish to work with your government to make sure that we can do that, because otherwise we're afraid that competing countries are going to be able to get that stack. So we would say that.
Anything that you're looking at that we can help you with so that you create a bigger and better IBM and hire a lot more people? Anything you need?
A few countries, we'll speak to members of the administration to make sure that those can go and that barriers get lowered for being able to do it quickly. We agree guardrails are necessary, but lower barriers would be very, very helpful.
You mean tariffs?
No,
Because are these are they tariffing you, making your life difficult? Are they doing anything else to make your life difficult?
it's the ability to take certain systems which have semiconductors inside them into these countries. So right now, because we have controls on where all the semiconductors can go, then the entire system is restricted. That's what we want to do, the same as.
How many countries do that?
Probably a half dozen. So.
I can tell you the countries already, I know.
Yes.
I know every country very well.
And,
We have ways of combating that quickly. So you'll let me know.
and the last part I'd like to say, I'd also like to thank you for all that you're doing to help modernize government itself, because we think that that's incredibly important. You know, you made a number of announcements, but a couple that I'd just like to point out, we worked with Commissioner Frank Bisignano to help make Social Security better. So I would like to thank you for your help on that. And we'll work with him on making IRS.
He's done a fantastic job.
Yes, Frank's great.
He's done a great job, Frank. He's had a great career, actually left a tremendous career where his salary, I think, was 100 times greater than it is now. And he was at JP Morgan Chase, and he's doing a fantastic, he did a great job at Social Security, quickly.
And we hope to help him replicate that now at the IRS.
Right. Thank you very much. Good job. Cristiano, please.
Yeah, just a few points. I think, first of all, Mr. President, thank you for your vision. Thank you for understanding the importance of the American private sector and industry, I think, in the growth of the economy. I want to just build on some of the things that were said by my colleagues. I think we have built probably one of the most advanced technologies in the world. And part of it is because I think the commitment to innovation that we have in the country, but also the fact that it has been American technology for the world. So I think we have an incredible opportunity. When I think about what Michael said about exporting AI, I had a conversation with Secretary Howard. Now that the trade deal's been made, is an opportunity to really build on those trade deals and export, I think, American technology. And also, as we think about the technology, it's an important vector to drive the reindustrialization, I think, of the country with technology. So we're incredibly excited about that. I think it's a big opportunity. I think it's the next wave of growth that we can build on those trade agreements. And I think it resonates what also Arvind said about the importance of the American technology stack. And then I'm just going to finish with 2 points. There are 2 exciting things happening in the world of technology coming right now. One is as AI becomes the new form of computing, AI is going not only to the data center, but to everything, to cars, to PCs. And we see now the ability to run models that you can only run AI in the data center. You can run that on a microcomputer, on a computer for Enrique, on a server, small server on-premise. So I think we're going to see the proliferation of AI. The other one is 6G. We had made a commitment working with your administration, working with FCC. We're going to accelerate 6G. We're working to launch first in the world in that LA Olympics. And I think that's another opportunity for America to lead in the next wireless evolution. So thank you. I thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for the partnership. And we're going to be hard at work, I think, driving that agenda.
So we're into 6G now. I just finished 5G. I was a leader on 5G, getting that done. And now they're up to 6.
Let's do it again.
What does that do? Give you a little bit deeper view into somebody's skin? See how far we got it? I like the cameras the old days. So they just had a nice feature. Now they cover every little. Let's see, Michael, you're in good shape. But I tell you, it's so the 6 is coming, huh?
It's done.
Does it ever end? And what happens? You'll be into 7, right? Before 6 gets old, you'll be into 7. Anybody have anything else to say? Anybody?
The other thing is, we want to thank you as well for the openness of your organization and your team. We always find people that wants to hear what we need and is willing to design programs that will support us. So thank you.
Well, here it is. We want you to just dominate the whole world in terms of what you do. It's a very important world. And you're doing that. We're making it easy for you. And That means you're gonna do it faster, it's more jobs, a lot of good things happen, right? Go ahead, please.
Mr. President, you might not recall, but in your first term, you actually sponsored the Department of Energy to build the largest systems ever built. And thanks to your sponsorship, the Department of Energy owns the 3 top supercomputers in the world.
Yeah.
And we built it with them. And these are systems that can do quintillion operations per second. And that means we can solve.
I know, I remember, we made that possible, it's worked out very well, good,
Solve problems. So now we're gonna build the next generation.
good, sounds good to me. Any questions, please?
Mr. President, thank you. Can you explain a little more about this Venezuelan oil tanker and share a little more information?
Well, I'll let the people do it, but you see the result, and I guess they probably have released the pictures by now, pretty soon. You'll discuss that with the appropriate people later on, but no, it was seized for very good reason.
Cuba.
Sir, there's a new proposal from DHS that would see tourists from a lot of countries have to hand over 5 years of social media history to get a tourist visa. Are you concerned at all that if that's implemented, there would be a decline in tourism next year? And what sort of material do you think is?
We're doing so
objectionable?
well, we just want people to come over here and safe. We want safety, we want security, we want to make sure we're not letting the wrong people come into our country. We're getting rid of a lot of bad ones from jails, from mental institutions, drug dealers. We're getting a lot of bad people, murderers. 11,888 murderers, half of them, almost exactly half of them committed more than one murder. We're getting rid of them. In some cases, we don't even want to get them out. We put them in jail because we're afraid they're going to come back into our country. We're not going to let them back in. So we've taken a very tough stand. And you see where we've been, like Washington, D.C. now, people walk down the streets, they go into restaurants at night. It's beautiful. It's like this beautiful thing to see because till I got here, this was a very, very bad place. We had a terrible thing happen 2 weeks ago with terrorism with regard to 2 National Guards people that are so phenomenal. One is no longer with us, and one, amazingly, we weren't looking with great hope on that, that Andrew. And today he got out of bed, actually, stood up, didn't say anything, it's a little early, but the chances of Andrew, other than his mother who said, nope, he's going to be okay. His mother was the most positive person. And could be that she'll be right. It's pretty amazing. Made progress. It was, both of them were so badly hurt, we never thought that one could survive. So looks like Andrew's doing pretty well.
Mr. President,
The winner of the Nobel Prize dedicated the prize to you, the Nobel Peace Prize. And she left Venezuela at a very risk to make it to the ceremony. There is a risk she could be arrested, actually. What would happen if she's arrested? What message do you send, or would you send to Nicolas Maduro?
Well, arrested by who? The Nobel Prize Committee? That's probably the ones that would arrest. I don't know anything about it. She was very gracious. She said I should have gotten the Nobel Prize, and I don't, I'm doing this to save lives. I'm not doing it for any other reason. But no, I don't like if she would be arrested. No, I wouldn't be happy with it.
Mr. President, Senate Republicans currently have a healthcare proposal that would take away, let those ACA subsidies expire, and then put about $1,000 in people's HSAs. Do you think that is enough money? And how do you ensure that people who will see those tax subsidies expire won't see their healthcare costs skyrocket?
Well, the Unaffordable Care Act, which is Obamacare, they call it now the unaffordable because it's unaffordable. It used to be called the affordable, but it was never affordable. It was always bad. It was basically designed for the benefit of insurance companies. And what we're doing is we want all of the billions and billions of dollars that went to insurance companies to go directly to the people, and they can buy their own health care. And people love it. I don't know if the Democrats are going to approve it because they want the insurance companies to make money. It was a scam. Obamacare was a scam. But we're going to see. I mean, the Republicans, I can tell you, want the money to go to the people. And we're winning that battle. The Democrats having a hard time with it because they're in the pocket of the insurance companies. Yes, please.
Yes, you spoke to some European leaders today, I think, sir.
I did.
Could you tell us about that? And is there a new revised peace plan that Ukraine has presented?
The leaders of France, we spoke to, Germany, and UK, all very good leaders, very good friends of mine, and we discussed Ukraine in pretty strong words. And we'll see what happens. I mean, we're waiting to hear answers before we progress. You know, we're not spending any money in Ukraine. We're selling basically missiles and everything else to NATO, and NATO's paying us, and then they distribute it to who they want. I guess they're mostly distributing to Ukraine, but we're not spending money. But you know, we're spending a lot of time and a lot of effort, because last month 27,000 soldiers were killed. Both, think of it, 27,000. That's if you take a football game and take half the stadium, that's 27,000. So 27,000 soldiers were killed. Russian and Ukrainian soldiers were killed. And I want to see that stop. We'll find out. Look, there are a lot of things happening right now. A lot of people say it's closer than it's ever been. It's a war that would have never started. If I were president, would have never started. It's a war that should never have started. But we'll have it figured out, I think, within a pretty short
When
time.
you say very strong terms, sir, can you explain that?
Well, I think we had some little disputes about people, and we're going to see how it turns out. And we said before we go to a meeting, we want to know some things, you know. They would like us to go to a meeting over the weekend in Europe, and we'll make a determination depending on what they come back with. We don't want to be wasting time. Sometimes you have to let people fight it out, and sometimes you don't. But the problem with letting people fight it out is you're losing thousands of people a week. It's ridiculous. The whole thing is ridiculous.
Mr. President, two questions. One, the oil tanker, who owns that oil tanker?
You'll get that information later.
Okay, and have you spoken to Maduro since your last conversation?
No, I
It's
haven't.
only been one conversation.
No.
And when you say that the European leaders want to have a meeting over the weekend, are you talking about with Zelensky or with them?
With Zelensky and us.
And you said in an interview yesterday that you think it's time for Zelensky to start accepting things. What things are you talking about?
I think he has to be realistic, and I do wonder about, you know, how long is it going to be till they have an election? It's democracy. It's a long time. They haven't had an election in a long time. It's losing a lot of people, and it's possible that the people, you know, if you look at the polls, I will say 82%. There was a poll that came out. 82% of the people are demanding a settlement be made. Ukrainian people. They want to see a settlement be made. I understand that. They're losing thousands and thousands of people a week. They want to see it ended. And I do say, you know, at what point, when do they have an election in Ukraine? That's not casting dispersions on anybody, but they do have a massive corruption situation going on there. And they do say, you know, when are they, people are asking this question, when do they have an election? Are they going to have an election? Or are they going to just keep it going like this? So I think it's time to get that war settled. And I think it's a war that can be settled. But it takes two to tango.
Mr. President, Warner Brothers, new owners of Warner Brothers Discovery to make changes at CNN, big changes, and we've spoken to Jared about it. What are you doing with him, or are you just sort of walling him off a little bit?
So what do you want to know?
What changes do you want to see at CNN under new
Well,
ownership?
I'm not involved in that. I will be probably involved, maybe involved in the decision. It depends. You have some good companies bidding on it. I think the people that have run CNN for the last long period of time are a disgrace. I think it's imperative that CNN be sold, because you certainly wouldn't want to put people, just leave those people with some money, good money, and CNN, so that, you know, they can spend even more money spreading poison, because it's lies. It's a disgrace. So I wouldn't want to see the same company end up with CNN, the same company with money, because right now they don't have too much money, but they have value, I guess, based on the bids. So they've got value. But I think CNN should be sold, because I think the people that are running CNN right now are either corrupt or incompetent.
And that'll be a factor in the decision making, because, you know, we've got some.
Well, in my mind, but you know, I can be talked out of that by some very talented people that we have, antitrust people. But I just think that the people that have run CNN into the ground, by the way, nobody watches, very few people watch. I don't think they should be entrusted with running CNN any longer. So I think any deal should be guaranteed and certain that CNN is part of it, or sold separately. But I don't think the people that are running that company right now and running CNN, which is a very dishonest group of people, I don't think that should be allowed to continue. I think CNN should be sold along with everything else.
Mr.
Sir,
President.
you spoke about affordability earlier in your remarks and yesterday in Pennsylvania. How much more can we expect to see you on the road kind of delivering that message? And are you worried at all about the Democrats winning a couple more things in Miami and Georgia?
I don't worry, but it's like statistically, it's amazing when you win the presidency, even if you win by a landslide like we did, and even if you do a good job. And some people say we've done the best opening 10 months in history, in the history of the presidency. I think we have. Who's done better? We ended 8 wars. We have the strongest economy. We have $18 trillion coming in, which is more than any country had, times I think 5 or 6. 18 trillion is a lot even in your standard, right?
Yes, sir.
Even for that guy, 18 trillion is big numbers. But we have $18 trillion coming in. Pretty amazing, right? I think Qualcomm would be very impressed if they had even a little piece of that. So we've done a great job, but for whatever reason, and nobody's been able to give me an answer, when you win the presidency, you seem to lose the midterms, even if you win the presidency by a lot and you do a great job as president. Some presidents have done good and they've lost, I think it's like 2 times in the last many, many years, it's been won. I don't know why. It doesn't make sense. Usually I can figure things out, but I don't know why, but that seems to be. But other than that, we should win because we're doing great. The economy is roaring. I think the economy is only going to go, better with all this money pouring in. We have factories being built, and forget about AI. We have AI more than anybody. We're leading AI by a lot. But we have many car companies coming in from Canada, from Mexico. They're closing up. They're coming in from Mexico. They're coming in from Canada, from Japan, from Europe, all over Europe, Germany, all over Europe. We're doing great. But for whatever reason, it doesn't matter how well they're doing, good and bad. The bad you understand, but even when a president is doing well, they seem to not do well in the midterms. So we're going to try and change it. There should be no reason for it. If anybody at the table can figure out, Bruce, a nice psychological reason, but so I want to win, and winning the midterms is important. People want us to win the midterms, and I think we have great spirit. We should win the midterms, yeah.
Under Joe Biden's administration, and during COVID specifically, Biden removed the safety standards on abortion drugs. Now I'm hearing from a lot of pro-lifers that they're very anxious because yesterday Bloomberg reported that your FDA is slow walking a review of the abortion drugs that Secretary Kennedy promised.
Yeah,
How soon do you want to see that review?
I'll find out. I'll ask them.
Do you want to see it?
I don't think there's slow walking anything, but I'll find out.
Any
Mr. President.
update on the clashes between Thailand and Cambodia, sir?
Yeah, I think I'll have to make a phone call. I was going to say that the Thailand and Cambodia, one of the 8 that I settled, they've been fighting for a long time. They've been fighting for a very long time, many, many, many decades. But I got along great with both. I found they were 2 great leaders, 2 great people, and I settled it once. I think I can do it pretty quickly. I think we're scheduling a phone call tomorrow.
Mr. President.
With Thailand.
On the Fed chair.
With Thailand, if just to answer, Steve, with Thailand and Cambodia, I think I can get them to stop fighting. Who else can do that? Think of it. Settled 8 wars. Every once in a while, one will flame up again and I have to put out that little flame. I have to put it out, but we're going to put it out again. So I think I'm scheduled to speak to them tomorrow and see if I can. It was unfortunate what happened. I mean, I know exactly what happened. It got started a little bit, but we'll see if we can put it in.
We're interested in the seizure of this tanker. What happens to the oil on that ship?
Well, we keep it, I guess.
Where does it go? What port does it go to?
Well, you have to follow the tanker. You're a good newsman. Just follow the tanker.
Do you know where it was going? Was it going to China?
Get a helicopter and follow the tanker.
Is it true it's going to
But
Cuba?
I assume we're gonna keep the oil.
Mr. President, on Fed chair, Kevin Hassett said you were going to announce your decision within the next 2 weeks. Is that correct?
maybe.
Are you doing your interviews with finalists today?
Well, I'm meeting with Kevin Warsh today, so I'm meeting with him. I sort of have a very good idea what I'm looking for. Again, I'm looking for somebody that will be honest with interest rates. That's all. I just want honesty. Our rate should be much lower. Our rate should be the lowest rates in the world. Because all these countries that you see, with low rates, many of them are low because of us, because they suck so much money out of us. But that's not happening anymore. We should have the lowest rates in the world. And without us, none of them really exist as an economy. I mean, I can show you these really prime, really wonderful countries. They've had nothing but success. It's because they took so much out of the United States. I mean, it's one of those little problems. I want to see that when we do well, we're rewarded for doing well, not the way it's been for the last pretty long period of time.
Are you asking these finalists to pledge to lower rates? Are you asking these finalists to pledge to lower rates if they become the chair?
I'll be asking questions and I'll be able to figure it out.
So President, we have 3 countries sending drugs to the US, Mexico, Venezuela, and Colombia. And you talked to the president of Mexico, you already talked to Nicolas Maduro. Have you considered talking to the president of Colombia, who you call a drug leader?
No, I haven't really thought too much about him. He's been fairly hostile to the United States. I haven't given him a lot of thought. He's going to have himself some big problems if he doesn't wise up. Colombia's producing a lot of drugs. They have cocaine factories that they make cocaine, as you know, and they sell it right into the United States. So he better wise up, or he'll be next. He'll be next too. I hope he's listening. He's going to be next. Yes.
Mr. President.
Because we don't like people when they kill people, and they sell drugs, they kill them in the United States, and Colombia is a major manufacturer of drugs, meaning cocaine in particular, as you know.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Multiple House Republicans in recent weeks, days, have been critical of Speaker Mike Johnson. I wanted to ask you if you're still confident in the Speaker to keep his conference together ahead of the midterms, and how often are you speaking about him?
I think Mike Johnson is great. He's had a majority of 2, 3, 4, then back to 2. We actually had 1. So we were 1 heart attack away from disaster. So everybody prayed for everybody's health. I think Mike Johnson's been a fantastic speaker. I mean, a very hard job because, when you have a small majority, and we got the biggest bill in the history of our country approved. Great Big Beautiful Bill. I call it the Great Big Beautiful Bill. There are different names for it, but to me, it's a Great Big Beautiful Bill because it gives the biggest tax cuts in history, the biggest regulation cuts in history. No tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime. I think Mike Johnson's been a great speaker. I think few people could have done that job.
Do you want to see another big package move through Capitol Hill in the next year, or?
Well, we don't need it because we got everything. This was supposed to be 17 bills. I think it was my idea, but with the concurrence of people that have done this a long time. And I said, why don't we make it 1 bill? Because it's very hard to get things approved by the Democrats. And it worked out because there was something good for everybody. If we would have done 17 bills, we wouldn't have gotten 1/3 of them approved. It was something great for everybody in the one, the Great Big Beautiful Bill.
If I can follow up, it's good to see you, Mr. President. I can follow up on the event last night in Pennsylvania, huge crowd turned out there.
Big crowd.
It seemed like Rally Trump was in prime condition last night. You enjoyed it. Just give me your thoughts on that. Then I do have a question on the gold card.
Last night was amazing in Pennsylvania. We had a tremendous crowd. It was like freezing. And the thousands of people on the sidewalk trying to get in, on the streets. It was an amazing evening, actually, and I think people really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. You could tell that.
I can tell that you enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it. I really did. Well, it's easy to enjoy when you do a good job, and when you can talk about things in a very positive way. It's hard not to say. We have potentially the greatest economic boom in the history of the world. It's being built right now, and when it opens, there will be nothing ever in history like what's happening in our country. And, Washington, D.C. is safe, and Memphis is down. Look at Memphis. Crime is down 60% in Memphis. We just got there 3 weeks ago. And we're going to have New Orleans. New Orleans was just sent a group of people there, and crime is down 28% in about 3 days. No, we do a good job, you know, and these are central casting people. These people they're very tough people if they have to be. They're very good, they're great patriots, but they are the toughest, and they don't take any nonsense. And every place we go, we knock down crime. Too bad that we're not invited more into Chicago, because we could save Chicago very quickly. But even that, we're doing it on a minimal basis until, you know, at some point we'll just go in and do what we have to do if the governor doesn't wise up. We got a bad governor, they have a bad mayor. I would say they're both incompetent, but it's hard to believe that people don't want to stop crime. We could stop the crime in Chicago in about 2 weeks. Go ahead.
My question is on the gold card. I apologize if I missed the answer to this. Is there a limit to how many gold cards these companies can buy?
No?
So the program is part of the already approved visas. So we're just going to have great people come into this country. You know, the average green card holder earned less than the average American. So they were more likely to be on the dole and be on our assistance programs than average Americans. And the idea is from President Trump, he wants to raise it, bring in the best people into America. So same visas, but now just full of the best people.
Basically, it's a green card, but much better, much more powerful, a much stronger path. And a path is a big deal. Have to be great people, but much stronger path. And it also, in addition to that, helps companies, because not only for companies, but if IBM gets somebody #1 in his class at the Wharton School of Finance, and you're dying to get the person, but you can't guarantee the person stays in the country, because oftentimes they'll say, I'm sorry, sir, you got to get out of here 24 hours, right? And you say, where's my employee? Now IBM can buy a card, and that employee can be there for essentially a very long period of time.
Mr. President,
It's so needed for the companies. You know, it's needed for others, but really it's basically a much better form of a green card. And you can't get green cards. They are impossible to get. This is much better than a green card. Yeah.
Yes, sir, did you tell Bruce Lincoln not to run for governor, or that she should think about not running for governor?
I haven't spoken to, first of all, he's a friend, she's a friend. These are two great people running. In a way, I hate to see them running against each other. I hope they're not going to be damaging each other. But Elisa's fantastic, and Bruce they're two fantastic people. And I always hate it when two very good friends of mine are running. And I hope there's not a lot of damage done. Sometimes it works the other way. The victor ends up being much stronger, because a lot of times that happens in politics.
Mr. President.
In a couple months, after you see who performs better.
Well, I think in New York, we have a convention toward the end of February, and I think you'll know pretty much at the end of February what's going to happen. And I'll probably have to, you know, do what I want to do. But I hope that he's running now, as you know, and she's running. We have two very talented people. Either one should win against the Democrats.
Mr. President. Mr. President.
Another legacy story lately focuses on one of your cabinet members predicting that you're going to fire this one, or you're going to get rid of that one. Of all your cabinet members, who would you perceive as the most under attack?
Well, I think my cabinet is fantastic. I read the same stories that I'm unhappy with this one or that one, and I'm not. I think the cabinet's done a great job. I read a story that I was unhappy with Pete because he was attacking drug dealers. And I said, that's not exactly right. I would say very much the opposite. Pete Hegseth has been phenomenal. I read a story recently, I'm unhappy with Christie. I'm so happy with it. I mean, we have a closed border. We have a border that's the best border in the history of our country. Why would I be unhappy? She's fantastic, actually. No, we have a fantastic cabinet. Really fantastic cabinet. I mean, Lutnick, I'll have to think about. No,
Can't have everything.
Can't have everything. He's doing great. Well, Howard's done really well, and Scott's done really well. We have just a fantastic cabinet. I'll tell you who's doing a great job is Linda McMahon. We're bringing education back to the states where it belongs. Education is going, we can't do any worse than we're doing right now. Let the states run it. You know, if you go back to some of our states that are run so well, so good, I would say 40 of them. And then you'll have trouble with 5, and you'll have bigger trouble with another 5. But you have 35 or 40 states that will run education as good as Norway or Denmark, Sweden. We have some, you know, the heads of the list are Denmark, Norway, Sweden, a few others. I think if you go to Iowa and you go to Indiana and you go to, I can name a lot of states, I think it would be almost the equivalent or maybe better. But you can't run a school system in Iowa from Washington, D.C. Yeah.
So the Gaza plan, when do you expect to announce members of the Board of Peace, the leadership of that?
Well, we'll do it early next year. And the Board of Peace are gonna, it'll be one of the most legendary boards ever. Everybody wants to be on it. It's mostly gonna be, I guess, you know, we were thinking about it that way, but they want to all do it. Basically, it'll be the heads of the most important countries.
Mr. President, on the
They all
video,
want to be on. It wasn't really planned. We thought we were going to get very distinguished people that do that kind of thing for a living. But really, it looks like it's turning out to be, they want to be on, the heads, the kings and the presidents, prime ministers, they all want to be on the board of this.
Mr. President, on the video,
Follow up to last night's rally, can you clarify, you have called the affordability crisis as a Democratic hoax, but you also want to make America affordable again?
No,
Can
the
you just
word
clarify?
that they use is a hoax, and because they're the ones that caused the problem. I'm talking about when you're trying to say it a different way. Now, it's pretty simple though, if you listen. It's a hoax where they created the problem. They're the ones that gave the high prices. So when they use the word affordability, they shouldn't be using that word because they're the ones that created this problem. They created the highest inflation in history, and they created the highest prices in history. And now we have to get those things down. But when they go, they look and they say affordability. They never discuss it. They just say the election's about affordability. Well, it may very well be. I think it's also about still the border. You have to remember the job. You know, the sad thing is for 7 months, we've had no people come through our border. Nobody can even believe it. 0 people. And the people that do that are largely Democrats, which the people that do the stats. We've had no people come in other than coming in legally. But if you take a look, and nobody wants to talk about that. In fact, last night I said, let me talk about the border. My own people told me, sir, nobody cares about the border anymore. You've fixed the problem. I said, do I get a little credit for fixing a disaster where millions of people a month would flow into our country and, you know, from prisons and from gangs and from drug dealers and mental institutions? They say, sir, you fixed the border. Nobody cares. I say, but I care. It's sad when you fix something and then you can't even use it. You can't talk about it. My own people don't want to talk about it anymore. But very simply, the Democrats created the worst crisis of inflation that this country has ever had. And with that came the highest prices that we've ever had. And I'm fixing it.
Mr. President, has Secretary Hegseth told you why he hasn't released the video of the second strike?
No, he hasn't. I thought that issue was dead. You're surprised you bring it up. You must be CNN.
Lawmakers are still
Are you
talking about it
CNN?
on the Hill.
Are you CNN?
I am CNN.
Don't you have shocked to find out?
But lawmakers are still talking about it on the Hill.
Well, I'll tell you, I don't know about lawmakers. Which lawmakers you talking about?
Mostly Democrats have been
Talking
talking
about
about trying to release
I
it.
mean, the people that you work for, the Democrats? You know you work for the Democrats, don't you? You're basically an arm of the Democrat Party. Thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
You want to talk?
Turn off the cameras. Thank you, guys. We'll go out that way. Photographers, please keep going. Thanks, Kristen.
It just went on site. It's gonna be good. He's going to I want to have a good time. Enjoy it. Well, at least now you know you'll get to play.
Citizenship verification requirements and discouraging states from providing taxpayer-funded health care to those who are not legally here and are not citizens of the United States. Some of our Republican colleagues have offered plans of their own on this week, which are also worth considering as we move to the future. We welcome bipartisan cooperation on these proposals. As with the pharmacy benefit manager reforms I recently introduced with Senator Wyden and many of our finance colleagues. But we must not simply kick the can down the road yet again. Every time we spend tens of billions of dollars for unsupervised and poorly designed subsidies, as our colleagues are asking us to do once again, we worsen the healthcare crisis that we all want to solve. And we do nothing to stop the explosive increase in premiums. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.
Senator from Louisiana.
Mr. President, tomorrow we're going to vote on two different visions of how to cover the cost of health insurance on the Obamacare exchanges. Democrats want to cover the cost of health insurance to benefit insurance companies. And I will tell you why I'm saying that, because I can make that case. And Republicans want to cover the cost of health insurance for the actual person buying the insurance, the patient, if you will. Mr. President, that's the difference between the Democratic plan and the Republican Health Care Freedom for Patients Act. So let me just kind of build that out. How do we make health care affordable again? First, Democrats want people to pay $6,000 out of pocket before the insurance kicks in. Republicans want to put thousands of dollars in the patient's pocket so she has that to pay before she actually gets into her deductible. Is this it? And let me demonstrate with this chart. The Democratic plan is to give 100% of the money to the insurance company, of which the insurance company takes 20% for deductible, for profit and overhead, and then uses the rest of the 80% to pay for the insurance that they think, that they agree the patient needs. Our plan puts the money in the patient's purse, her pocketbook, his wallet. 100% of the money in there is used for the care she knows she needs. Doesn't have to get permission from the insurance company. She knows she needs it. She can see her doctor, her dentist. She can get her pharmaceuticals. She can get eyeglasses, dental care, and orthodontia. That is a patient-driven account. Now, this is the plan that Senator Crapo, the finance chairman, and I proposed. So let's compare the two plans. Again, two competing visions, two different ways. And I would argue that the Democratic plan principally benefits insurance companies, and the Republican plan is there to benefit the patient. Let's look at this. Democrats just want to extend the enhanced premium tax credits. Who gets the money? Insurance companies. Under our program, where the money goes to the patient and their families get it. What can it be used for? The enhanced premium tax credit that the Democrats wish to extend, no changes whatsoever, 3 years, subsidizes premiums. That goes to the insurance company. On our side, the money that the patient gets into that account, the money that we put into her pocket, so she can pay the out-of-pocket for the insurance company. It goes for real care. The dentist, the physician, the glasses, the prescriptions. Who makes the decisions? Under the Democratic plan, the insurance companies make the decision. Under our plan, the patient makes the decision. We give power to the patient, not profit to the insurance company. Does it lower cost? Clearly not. What we've seen since Obamacare has passed is costs explode. We continue to have the healthcare inflation we're looking at now. But if we empower the patient, and if we give her the money, and we say the more careful you are spending this money, the more that money is going to stretch. I can promise you, she's going to be like every other responsible wife, mother, keeper of the family wallet. She's going to shop. Wait, my x-ray is $50 here. No, my x-ray is $500 there. I'm going where it's $50. She will make the wise financial decision for her family. And how does it work with low-cost bronze plans? Here, under the Democratic plan, we have just heard Senator Crapo point out how much fraud there has been with this system that we're currently under. Under the patient-driven account, the money goes into a health savings account, into your wallet, if you will, which is connected with your bronze, and the mechanisms by which we set that up make sure that we can cut out that fraud. And our bill goes after their fraud, their bill tolerates it. There is nothing in their legislation to stop the fraudulent stealing of billions of dollars of taxpayers' money. What it does do is continue payments to insurance companies who take 20% of that money for overhead and profit, whereas under our plan, did I say, the money we give to the patient, 100% goes to the care she knows she needs. That's the plan that Republicans are proposing. Put it differently, under the Republican plan, there is power to the patient. Under the Democratic plan, there is profit and power to the insurance company. Under the Republican plan, the patient uses the healthcare in her wallet, the healthcare money in her wallet to purchase the care she knows she needs. Under the Democratic plan, you go to the insurance company and place, please, maybe, please, can I get permission to get the care I know I need? The Republican plan meets the American people where they are financially. Studies show that only that most families have less than $1,000 worth of savings. Under our plan, we recognize that. And we put money in their wallet, pocketbook, or purse so that they can pay for the care they need before they go into their deductible. I like this. This is a new poster for people who've heard my talk before. This is the Democratic plan. You get a $6,000 deductible, and that's what you feel like that woman right there when she is stressed because she doesn't have the money to pay for the care her family needs. Here in our health savings account, the money is, if you will, in her purse. And when the doctor says you need this prescription for your son's earache, she has the money to pay for it right off the bat. Democratic plan, it brings financial stress. Profits to the insurance company, stress to the patient. The Republican plan, pocket, money in the pocket to pay for the out-of-pocket for the insurance plan. Now, by the way, this plan in which we put money in the pocket of the patient to pay for the out-of-pocket of our insurance policy, the Democratic leader has called a junk plan. No, pause for a second, Mr. President. Democrats put that plan into place. Democrats actually put these plans on the Obamacare exchange. He is calling a junk plan that which they have been preserving for the last 10 years, swearing up and down that it meets the needs of the American people. All Republicans have done is added to it something called a health savings account. If you will, money in the patient's purse, pocketbook, or wallet to pay for the out-of-pocket associated with this plan. To call this a junk plan either shows that the Democratic leader does not know what we're talking about, or that hypocritically, he has been defending an Obamacare law which created this very plan. By the way, I was smiling last night when I saw that the New York Times mimicked this talking point, like a Democratic Party organ. What's junk? That for a family of four, two parents, 50 in their 50s, children 18 and 19, that they'd get $5,000 a year. Think about that, Mr. President. $5,000 a year for that family I just described to pay for their initial healthcare expenses. Think about if one of those 19-year-old children had diabetes, chronic care. Under our plan, they've got $5,000 to help pay for that chronic care right off the bat. Under the Democratic plan, with a $6,000 deductible, you're paying for that out of pocket. And that's what your face looks like because you cannot afford it. Our plan relieves the stress. Now, next, the minority leader says that he wants to reject all these benefits. He wants to continue to send 100% of the money to the insurance company, which takes 20% for profit and overhead, as opposed to send the money to the patient for her purse, wallet, or pocketbook, so that she has money in her pocketbook to pay the out-of-pocket from the insurance company. He's defending that with a $6,000 deductible because he says that Republicans want to prevent taxpayer-funded abortions. He wants to have taxpayer-funded abortions, apparently, and Republicans, consistent with the American will, as we have for decades, think that we should not do that. And somehow he's making out like this is a new development. Well, just for the sake of the American people, the so-called Hyde Amendment, which prevents federal dollars from being spent on abortion, has been agreed to by Democrats on annual appropriation bills since the 1970s. They have been agreeing to this for 50 years, and all of a sudden that is being used as a rationale to send 100% of the money to the insurance companies, who take 20% of it for profit and overhead, as opposed to sending thousands of dollars to the patient for her to pay first dollar coverage, to have it in her pocketbook to pay the out-of-pocket for her insurance plan. Mr. President, I don't want this to seem partisan. I've been saying Republican and Democrat, but let me say, we should not have a Republican plan. We should not have a Democratic plan. We should have an American plan. This is the cartoon representing an American. But think of the person you know. Think of the person you graduated from high school with. Good people, good people. Several kids trying to make ends meet. They don't have a lot of money, but good people. That's what we're talking about. Let's just separate this from R versus D. What about the people we are supposed to care about who cannot afford a $6,000 deductible, but would love to have thousands of dollars in their purse, pocketbook, or wallet to pay for the out-of-pocket cost associated with that insurance plan? Isn't that where we want to be? Now, just to put a face on this, maybe some numbers I should say. This is real. This is off healthcare.gov from 2026, this coming year. A family of four, couple in their 50s, two children, 20 and 21, 500% of federal poverty level, about $160,000, I think, per year. Okay? Under our plan, they would be able to get a bronze plan as opposed to a silver, which saves them roughly $6,000 per year. The amount in their health savings account, if you will, in their pocketbook, purse, or wallet, in their pocketbook to pay the out-of-pocket cost of the insurance plan, would be $5,000. Under what Democrats are insisting they must buy, will not give them an option. They have $0 to pay towards that $6,000 deductible. And the net deductible, because they say, oh my gosh, if you get a plan with a lower premium, your deductible is higher. because of the money that would be going into the health savings account, the net deductible is cheaper with the cheaper policy under the Republican plan. Under the Democratic plan, the net deductible is higher. Let me add one more thing. Senator Crapo spoke about the incredible amount of fraud associated with the current implementation of Obamacare. And the Democratic leader wants a straight up, clean reauthorization for 3 years. He does not want to fight that fraud. Whatever bills have put up in the past, that's not what he's talking about now. He's talking about right now, not only 100% of the money going to the insurance company with $6,000 deductibles, he's talking about continuing the system that is rife with fraud. If you're at home working, or no, if you're at work and you're working so hard and you're paying taxes to support our country and you hear there's fraud, it should drive you crazy. It drives me crazy. Why won't our Democratic colleagues join us in doing things to stop that fraud? I've never seen a party so committed to generating profits for insurance companies as what I'm seeing right now. Mr. President, let's cut that fraud. Let's put the money in the purse, pocketbook, or wallet of the American citizen to give her money to pay for the out-of-pocket cost of an insurance company. Don't stick them with a $6,000 deductible. Let's give power to the patient, not profit to the insurance company. And with that, Mr. President, I yield.
Mr. President.
Senator from California.
Mr. President, we're here today just about a month after the longest shutdown in American history. You all remember the 43 days that we went without a fully functioning federal government. Let's remember why that happened. Plain and simple, it was because our Republican colleagues refused to take steps to save health care for millions of Americans. In large part, I don't know if it was an individual choice or simply because there was no direction from the White House to come in and do so. All I know is that our Republican colleagues in Congress refused to come to the table, refused to negotiate with Democrats, refused to acknowledge that we were literally weeks away from a crisis that will kick millions of people, millions of Americans off their health insurance unless Congress acts. That's the point Democrats are trying to make, and that's the issue we were trying to address during the shutdown, because the appropriations process is the opportunity to address a crisis that's right around the corner. Now, eventually, yes, a handful of my Democratic colleagues took the Republican majority at their word that after voting to reopen government, addressing this spike in healthcare costs was the next order of business. At the time, I expressed my skepticism to go along with a promise to fix something later from a party that earlier this year enacted the biggest cuts in history to Medicaid. I find it hard to take the word of the Republican majority that they're committed to addressing healthcare costs and to expand coverage to more Americans when they just kicked 15 million Americans off their insurance. And so, yes, just about a month after this longest shutdown in American history, we now find ourselves 3 weeks away from the expiration of the Affordable Care Act tax credits that so many of us are talking about. Now, have hope because Democrats are here with a plan. We'll ask this body to vote on a straightforward 3-year extension of these life-saving subsidies that we all support. The question will be, are there enough Republicans that will join us in doing so? Keep people on their health care. And we can do the policy work and negotiation to address some of the genuine concerns that we've heard about over these last couple of months. But don't let health coverage lapse for millions of Americans. This isn't a game. We're 3 weeks away from the catastrophic spike of cost in health insurance for so many. Over 20 million Americans are on the verge of seeing their monthly premiums not just increase, but skyrocket. 4 million Americans could be forced to give up their insurance altogether, including 400,000 in California, my home state. The increase in premiums mean hundreds, if not thousands of dollars more monthly, not annually, but monthly for working families. Working families who are already having a tough time making ends meet as costs are rising all around them. Cost of groceries, cost of energy bills, cost of housing, and now cost of healthcare too, to the point that Americans in having to make these tough choices. Do I pay the rent? Do I pay the water bill? Do I pay the light bill? Can I even afford health insurance next year for my family? That's a truly heartbreaking decision that's happening all across the country. I know you're hearing from your constituents, and I'm hearing from mine. I hear from people like Lisa, a single mom from Meadow Valley, California, who was diagnosed with Hodgkin's disease in 1996. Thank God today, Lisa is cancer-free, in no small part thanks to regular checkups and the affordable health care plan that she can participate in because of these tax credits. But in 2026, Lisa isn't just looking after herself and her own health, she's looking after her son. She's a single parent. She's looking after her parents as they're aging. They're now in their 80s. And she's wondering whether this lapse in tax credits might put her necessary treatment out of reach. So I'm here not just speaking up, I'm here fighting for her. I hear from people like Lana, a small business owner in Oakland, California, who has 2 kids in college, and college isn't cheap. And as she says, quote, "It's tough to be in the middle class right now." Lana's so determined to give her kids a good education. But with less financial aid available, right? Don't get me started on what else has been cut by this Republican majority in Congress. For her, it fundamentally means redirecting money that would otherwise go to her retirement plan. So imagine that, having to choose between investing in your future retirement or your kids' education or your access to health care. While the subsidies for the ACA premium still exist, she's able to make it work. Without those subsidies, she doesn't know what's going to have to go. Do you give up your health care? Do you have to start dipping into your retirement, putting your future financial security at risk? Or do you give up your kids' dreams of a higher education? Again, that painful choice is the reality for so many families right now. And so I'm fighting for them too. Like, I can go on and on with story after story, example after example. It doesn't have to be this way. That's why Democrats have put forward this serious, tangible plan to avoid this fiscal crisis, this healthcare cost crisis for families across the country. And no, the fact of the matter is, our Republican colleagues don't have a serious plan, look no further to the fact that it's the 11th hour now, and they've put forward a proposal that wouldn't lower premiums for a single American. In fact, it would make the problem worse. It would allow the tax credits to expire. It will increase premiums and deductibles for tens of millions of Americans. It'll push many people into what may be referred to as a bronze plan, or in reality, a catastrophic plan, the least comprehensive coverage on the market with sky-high deductibles. In some of these plans, you get a $1,000 coupon. That doesn't do a hell of a lot when these junk plans are forcing families to pay thousands of dollars out of pocket before the insurance even kicks in. And it certainly won't protect people from financial ruin when they get truly, truly sick. But sadly, it's not surprising. It's not shocking. This is an 11th hour proposal idea coming from a party that for 15 years has been talking about repeal and replace, not just attacking the ACA. They vowed to repeal and replace, repeal and replace. No shortage of efforts to repeal the ACA, but in 15 years, they haven't come forward with a plan to replace it. Certainly not a better plan to replace the ACA. So let's get real. We know that this will cause hardship. And the hardship and the pain that is so tragic is made worse because we know it's preventable. So let's vote tomorrow and pass this clean 3-year extension of the ACA tax credits and work to improve upon the policy and the plans that are in place. It's not controversial, folks. The overwhelming majority of American people support extending the ACA tax credits. And not just supportive of what we're doing, Americans are demanding that we do something about the cost of healthcare and the cost of living overall. You've seen Trump's approval ratings on the economy, haven't you? I know you're well aware of the election results from last month when an overwhelming majority of Americans cast their ballots rejecting Trump and Republican policies that are putting billionaires over the needs of working families. They're fed up. They're demanding that their government do something to help them get by, to help them survive in many cases. To address the affordability crunch, a true crisis that Donald Trump dismisses as a con job and as a hoax. So here we are on the eve of a truly consequential vote to prevent costs from rising for the American people, to prevent healthcare becoming out of reach for too many families. Here's our chance as a body to truly do something about that. So I urge everybody to vote yes. And let's help millions of Americans keep their healthcare come the new year. Because we know that a no vote will only rip that care away from millions of families. The choice, the contrast couldn't be any more clear. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.
President, Texas. Mr. President, I rise today to recognize a true servant of Texas, Carl Micha. For over 10 years, Carl has worked in my office, starting as my regional director and now ending his career as my deputy chief of staff and state director. For over 3 decades, Carl has dedicated his life to public service, the Lone Star State, and this nation. So today, I'd like to share part of his story, his work, and the legacy he leaves behind as he enters retirement. Carl is known for his exemplary character, quality leadership, and genuine compassion. He is someone who inspires others through integrity, empathy, and a clear vision of what is possible. Carl is led not by relying on authority or titles, but by setting an example of accountability, respect, and dedication. But most importantly, Carl has always been committed to uplifting those whom we serve, driving collective success while nurturing trust, collaboration, and a shared sense of purpose. Carl's career has been defined by steady leadership, a commitment to service, and an unwavering devotion to the people of Texas and the United States. Throughout his storied career, Carl has served in roles that placed him at the intersection of policy, people, and crisis response. As my Deputy Chief of Staff and State Director, he has overseen operations in Washington, D.C. and across Texas, serving more than 31 million Texans and leading a team of more than 60 staff members across the country. His position demanded poise, strategic judgment, and compassion, qualities he has consistently demonstrated. Carl has been at the forefront of the most pivotal and challenging moments in recent Texas and American history. He helped guide statewide responses and engagement following hurricanes and floods and tornadoes and wildfires and community crises, including the crisis at our southern border for the 4 years of the Biden administration. And like all of us, he navigated the uncertainty brought by the COVID-19 pandemic, ensuring Texans remained informed and connected to federal resources. These were not moments for the faint of heart. They were moments that required steady, empathetic leadership. And Carl was there. Time and again, he stepped forward to help communities heal, to support elected officials in crafting responses, and to ensure that the voices of Texans were heard in Washington. But Carl's influence extends far beyond crisis management. His career has been a masterclass in forging relationships and strengthening institutions. During his time with the University of Texas system, he helped launch the Chancellor's Centurions program, cultivating future leaders in education and healthcare. He also served as the UT system's chief liaison to business organizations nationwide, bolstering partnerships and supporting growth for one of the state's most important institutions. Prior to working at UT, Carl built his foundation in public service, working with Senator Kay Bailey Hutchison, my predecessor, rising from an assistant to her regional director. And while Carl has dedicated his career to public service, he has also invested deeply in his community. He has served on the Austin Club Board of Directors, contributed to the Austin Chamber of Commerce, supported the Texas X's, and remained active in organizations that celebrate Texas history, education, and civic engagement. In every chapter of his life, Carl has embodied the values we cherish: integrity, commitment, loyalty, and leadership. He's been a bridge builder, a steady hand in times of crisis, a mentor to many, and a servant leader to all. Carl's career reflects both accomplishment and character. His career is a testament to what one person can achieve when they lead with purpose, humility, and heart. When Carl's colleagues reflect on his leadership, one theme rises above all others: his heart. They describe someone who cared deeply for his team, who held high expectations, but met them himself every single day, and whose Texas pride and loyalty ran as steady as his professionalism. Beneath his attention to detail was a genuine sentimental spirit that shaped this office in ways he never fully realized. They reflected on how Carl walked with them through every walk of life, through celebrations, through grief, and through the mundane. There are countless stories I could share about Carl, but they all show the mark of a true servant leader. He inspired excellence. He opened doors. He changed lives. Carl's legacy is written not just in the work he accomplished, but in the people he lifted along the way. So, Carl, while your departure from this team is bittersweet, I want to say congratulations on an extraordinary legacy. I also want to say thank you. Thank you for changing lives. And in recognizing such leadership, it is equally important to thank his incredible wife, Tara, whose support and service alongside him made his contributions possible and even more meaningful. I will also note that Carl is known throughout the state of Texas for having the most impeccable head of hair that could possibly grace a fellow. And when he comes to DC and walks the hallway, he is regularly greeted with Senator, Senator, as everyone he meets is convinced, Mr. President, I'm sorry to say that he is one of us. I have wondered sometimes if Carl has come down to the Senate floor and cast a vote. I feel confident the clerk would record the vote and assume he must be a senator and there must have been a new special election that they missed. Carl, you've been a dear friend to me and my wife Heidi for decades. And I can speak for everyone when I say you will be missed. Your retirement is greatly deserved, and I look forward to continuing our friendship in this next chapter of life. Thank you, and I yield the floor. And I suggest the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Alsobrooks.
President.
I recognize the senator from Rhode Island.
Mr. President, I would ask for unanimous consent to dispense with the calling of the roll.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, the clock is ticking. In a matter of days, 24 million Americans will see their health insurance premiums double or triple. Since August and even earlier, Democrats have been imploring Republicans to do the right thing and extend the health care tax credits that will make health insurance affordable. For months, Republicans dawdled and did it. Finally, last night at the 11th hour, they came up with an unworkable partisan plan that cuts more money out of Medicaid, penalizes women who need reproductive health care, and introduces an almost Darwinian system that gives people a finite amount of money to pay for routine health care and little more coverage if they get seriously ill and need costly treatment. Their plan will not work. More than that, there's no time to implement it. The solution is simple: extend the existing tax credits. If there are additional bipartisan reforms to reduce costs, and I believe there is, let's continue to work on them once we have adopted the extension. Because if we don't pass this bill, we know what will happen. The insurance marketplace will falter and costs will get higher for everyone, not just those who lose the tax credit. But as more money comes out of the system, the insurance companies will charge higher rates for everyone. Indeed, too often when health insurance premiums soar, people who used to be able to afford health insurance will end up foregoing it altogether. They'll still get sick, and the cost they can pay will be absorbed by others, perhaps. In my state, Rhode Island, 13,000 people are expected to drop coverage because of the Republicans' failure to extend the health care tax credits. That's 13,000 people saying, I give up. I can't afford to buy health insurance. I'll take my chances and go to the ER if something happens. People who are relatively healthy may just roll the dice and hope they won't need health care next year. Other people who are sick and really need the stability of health insurance, have no choice. They will pay the increased premiums, and will suffer the consequences of that, cutting back on other necessities, food, utilities, housing, and some will fall into poverty. During this holiday season, we can do something by simply extending the Affordable Care Act tax credits. We can ensure that millions of working people can afford their health insurance across this country. And that's what I'll be voting to do shortly, along with many of my colleagues. Democrats have put forth a proposal that would extend these vital tax credits for the next 3 years, guaranteeing lower health care costs, lower premiums for millions of Americans. Yesterday, like a student who writes a term paper the night before it's due, Senate Republicans finally unveiled their proposal. It is highly flawed and partisan, as I have said. But I must give Senators Cassie and Crapo credit for at least acknowledging that this is a serious issue for American families, because it's been evident that the President, the Speaker of the House, and many other colleagues on the other side of the aisle would simply prefer to do nothing to address the triple-digit premium increases taking effect starting this January. Why do I say that? Because my Democratic colleagues and I have been asking our Republican colleagues for months to join us to extend the tax credits, but they have declined. In fact, congressional Republicans could have extended the tax credits or their own plan on health care costs as a part of their massive $4.5 trillion tax bill earlier this year. But in all the giveaways in that bill, they could not find a dime to address the health care costs facing working Americans. Instead, they were prepared to let health insurance premiums double for working families throughout the country. Many of my Republican colleagues who oppose the credit say people should have more choice over their health care options and more skin in the game. What they don't acknowledge is that the ACA tax credits empower people to choose health insurance policies that they know will meet their needs today and will cover them if and when they need coverage for an emergency or for a chronic condition. Health saving accounts and the cut rate policy the Republicans want may be okay when you're healthy, but they won't help keep families out of poverty when they face a real health care crisis. What will keep families out of poverty? The ACA tax credits. We cannot allow them to expire. And I've already heard from my constituents about what it means to them, as I'm sure every member of this Senate has. Jeffrey from Wesley, Rhode Island, wrote this to me. I am a retiree on a fixed income purchasing my health insurance through Health Source Rhode Island. Today, I received a letter in the mail from the state of Rhode Island outlining the shocking details comparing my 2025 medical insurance costs with those projected for 2026. To give context, my current health insurance plan for my wife and I costs $1,181.86 per month. And after advanced premium tax credits, the tax credits we're talking about in our legislation of $896.58, we pay $285.28. The health insurance plan I have is projected to increase to $1,505 in 2026 for a 27.4% increase. That in and of itself seems unconscionable with inflation running around 3% currently. However, the real kicker is that my tax credits are expected to expire and will be zero for 2026. which in real terms to me means that my health insurance monthly cost will skyrocket from $285.28 to $1,505.47 for a whopping increase of 428%. Nino from Wakefield, Rhode Island, similarly said, I just got my estimated charges for healthcare in 2026 from Health Source Rhode Island. By the way, that is our ACA exchange in Rhode Island. My cost is going up by over 300%. I can't imagine how many of the 24 million Americans with ACA healthcare exchanges will lose their healthcare if the subsidies are not reinstated. Lee wrote to me saying, my insurance rates will climb on the marketplace from $773 to over $1,300 and will be unaffordable. Without health insurance, I will die. I live with rare diseases that pose life-threatening effects on a daily basis. We have no spare funds for an increase in our health insurance. This administration is trying to take away the only thing that is keeping me alive. And I am a productive member of society. I am a defense contractor. I am a graduate student. I am a dog mom. I am a neighbor, friend, and community advocate. I matter. Please fight for me. Don't stop fighting for my ability to have health insurance and stay alive. If I go more than 3 days without meds, I can end up in the ER with a stroke. I need my job to afford meds. I need health insurance to be able to work. I need a graduate degree to keep my job. I'm supposed to graduate in December 2025 with a master's in systems engineering. I need a car to get to school, to get to my degree. I need meds to drive my car. Those are real Americans, working Americans, contributing, in this case, to our national security. And without the tax credits, this young lady believes that she will probably die. These are real people. They're facing impossible decisions about their health care. And it's not just happening in Rhode Island. There are people like Jeffrey, Nino, and Lee in every state. And the tough choices they are facing are entirely avoidable. The bill we are going to vote on would do just what is needed. Prevent these drastic increases in healthcare costs, extend the tax credits, and provide certainty to everyone shopping for healthcare right now. The more people we get insured, the better it is for everyone. Costs go down. When only the sickest people sign up for healthcare, the insurance companies have to cover the cost, so prices go up. It destabilizes the entire healthcare system. So this is not only bad policy directed at people who participate in the Affordable Care Act, this is bad policy for our entire healthcare insurance system. And what's more is that when people have healthcare insurance, they go to the doctor. They get preventive care. They get things checked out before it's an emergency. And an emergency is typically much more expensive. It would mean fewer people showing up at the emergency rooms for preventable healthcare crises. And it means people could live healthier, longer, and work, being more productive, being productive tax-paying members of our society. I urge my colleagues to extend the tax credits and keep 24 million Americans from seeing their premiums double and 5 million Americans from losing their health care in the coming weeks. It is the right thing to do. It is economically a very effective and efficient thing to do. And I can't think of anything more in keeping with the morality of helping our fellow Americans than allowing these people to continue with their health insurance. And with that, Mr. President, I would yield the floor.
Mr. President.
I recognize the senator from Minnesota.
Mr. President, I join my colleague from Rhode Island and so many others to ask our Republican colleagues that they vote with us to stem this crisis. Tens of millions of Americans are facing this healthcare crisis. They're seeing their premiums double or even triple as they enroll in a health insurance plan for next year. This isn't a January thing, a February thing, it's a now thing, a right now thing. If Congress doesn't act, and if our Republican colleagues don't join us in simply extending tax credits that have been in place for years, the new premiums, they'll start paying them on Monday, 5 days from now. Right now, they're looking at their budgets. My constituents are, people all over the country are, making decisions about how to afford care or whether they will have to go uninsured because they can't afford it, or buy some junk plan that they're not sure how that'll cover them and certainly won't cover most of their routine health care. So I do urge our Republican colleagues to join us to stop these costs on premiums from skyrocketing, to protect health care. We have put forward a very reasonable proposal to extend the healthcare tax credits that have been helping tens of millions of people for 3 years. We've asked them to extend it for 3 years. We actually asked them to extend it for 2 years. We've asked them to extend it to 1 year. And I will note, this was during the shutdown, that a 1-year extension, if they would agree to that, is about the same cost as the amount of money that the President of the United States gave to Argentina. So that is more important than helping people with their health care. We're simply saying, let's make sure the same tax credits that are helping people afford their health care that are in place today, not some new radical plan, that are in place today that made more accessible health care yesterday and last year and the year before that, continue to be there for families next year. If we extend the tax credit, we can bring relief during the holidays as people are facing the effects of these tariffs, which have increased everything from Christmas presents on to housing costs, trying to get timber to electricity, you name it. Millions of Americans are now going to have to decide, do I extend my health coverage, or can I pay my rent or my electricity bill? Can I put food on the table? I've heard all over my state about this, particularly in the rural areas. You know why? 27% of farmers and ranchers are on these Affordable Care Act plans. In my state, it's called MNsure. Like Danae and Mike in St. Cloud, not in the metropolitan area of the Twin Cities, but they're business owners and small business. They say they're already struggling with rising costs and will now see their premiums double. Or Jody in Windham, Minnesota, who will have to pay more than triple her coverage for her and her husband next year as their premiums go from $500 per month to $1,800 per month. Susan from St. Paul told me that these massive increases are truly crippling her family budget. In Mankato, Desiree, this is where my in-laws live in Mankato, has already sacrificed her own educational and career goals to pay for health care for her kids. Now she says she's trying to figure out how to afford health care for the family, and is worried that families like hers will be financially ruined, in her words. Dan from Red Wing, families like his don't know what they'll do. Some will take on second jobs if they can find them. Some will take on debt to keep their coverage. Others may be forced to drop coverage altogether. Karen from Moorhead on the North Dakota border told me, I am very fearful that I will lose my insurance because of not being able to afford it. It's not just in Minnesota. In fact, more than 3/4 of the people who get health care through this marketplace live in states that President Trump won. So that's why, talk about a reasonable idea to our Republican colleagues when 3/4 of the policyholders are in states that Donald Trump won. has been our focus. I would do other things. I would do more on prescription drug negotiations. I would do something about a public option. I would do many other things to make this better. But for right now, we're dealing with now. Earlier this year, we marked the 60th anniversary of Medicaid and Medicare. More than 110 million Americans depend on these programs, and we know that we should be strengthening care and not undermining it. But right now, I urge my colleagues to join us in simply extending these healthcare tax credits. As one of my farmers put it, he's facing a perfect storm of ugly. The tariffs have dried up his markets overseas, his input costs for parts for his equipment, too expensive, and now this healthcare plan that he didn't see coming. He didn't believe that when President Trump had promised that he would reduce costs, that he would be seeing a doubling of his healthcare premiums. It's time to work together to do what we all know will keep costs down for families. So instead of sending $20 billion to Argentina, maybe we could spend it here to help our constituents afford their health care. That would be at least about 1 year. It's $24 billion for 1 year. That was $20 billion. Budgets are decisions about values and what you value. And it is time for our colleagues to not just say what they're saying behind closed doors, but what they should vote their constituents and vote with us to help with their health care premiums. Mr. President, I yield the floor.
I recognize the Majority Whip.
I ask unanimous consent that the Senate resume legislative session and be in a period of morning business with senators permitted to speak therein for up to 10 minutes each.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that all time on the calendar number 203 SJ Res 82 be expired and at the time to be determined by the Majority Leader in consultation with the Democrat Leader, no later than Friday, December 19th, the joint resolution be read a third time and the Senate vote on passage of the joint resolution notwithstanding Rule 22.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the Committee on the Judiciary be discharged from further consideration of S 2584 and that the Senate proceed to its immediate consideration.
The clerk will report.
S 2584, a bill to amend Title 18 United States Code regarding additional assessments on convicted persons and for other purposes.
Without objection, the committee is discharged. The Senate will proceed.
I ask unanimous consent that the Cornyn substitute amendment at the desk be considered and agreed to, the bill as amended be considered read a third time and passed, and that the motions to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to the immediate consideration of calendar 271 S 1884.
The clerk will report.
Calendar number 271 S 1884, a bill to clarify the Holocaust Expropriated Art Recovery Act of 2016 to appropriately limit the application of defenses based on the passage of time and other non-merits defenses to claims under that act.
Without objection, the Senate will proceed.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the committee reported amendments be agreed to, the bill as amended be considered read a third time and passed, and that the motions to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to the immediate consideration of S 3424, which is at the desk.
The clerk will report.
S 3424, a bill to amend Titles 11 and 28 United States Code to modify the compensation payable to trustees and so forth and for other purposes.
Without objection, the Senate will proceed.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the bill be considered read a third time, passed, and the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that when the Senate completes its business today, it stand adjourned until 9:30 a.m. on Thursday, December 11th. That following the prayer and the pledge, the journal proceedings be approved today. The morning hour be deemed expired. The time of the two leaders be reserved for their use later in the day, and the Senate resume consideration of the motion to proceed to calendar 285 S 3386. Further, notwithstanding Rule 22, the cloture motions filed during Tuesday's session of the Senate ripened at 11:30 a.m. and following the cloture vote on the motion to proceed to calendar 284 S 335, the Senate proceeded to an executive session to resume consideration of executive calendar number 4 S Res 532. Finally, I ask that the post-cloture time be expired, the Senate vote on adoption of the resolution, and if adopted, the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table, and the Senate resume legislative sessions and be in the period of morning business with senators permitted to speak therein for up to 10 minutes each.
Without objection.
Mr. President, if no further business to come before the Senate, I ask that it stand adjourned under the previous order until following the remarks of Senators Markey and Cantwell.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.
I didn't want you to confuse the decision because it says following the remarks.
I recognize the senator from Washington State. We're not.
Thank you, Mr. President. I come to the floor tonight. I've come to the floor tonight to talk about a few issues. Literally, I thought I was going to come and talk about healthcare and the need for us to come together to help reduce healthcare costs and to continue to fight to make sure Americans are covered, because covering them helps reduce all our costs when you have the reduction of uncompensated care. But I also wanted to mention a very important safety issue on aviation. But what I need to say now is really to the state of Washington and to our National Weather Service people. I just got off the phone from our National Weather Service director for the Pacific Northwest, who was telling me about the extremely dangerous events that are now taking place in the Northwest with flooding, that we are going to see catastrophic events in at least a couple of our counties, and certainly a lot of damage in the better part of Puget Sound. So it's very important that the public understand that these rivers, particularly in Snohomish and Skagit County, are going to reach catastrophic levels, literally 4 to 5 feet above the historic mark of these rivers. So this weather event of what is called an atmospheric river bringing about this much precipitation into our region is going to cause the need for evacuations. Do not tarry in the evacuation. If evacuations are requested, please comply. These are very drastic situations, and we need the public to understand that. So I'm sure you're going to hear a lot more from your local forecasters, your county executives, your emergency response teams. But just know that we are under an unbelievable weather event, and we need to have the public's cooperation. I would like to turn now, before I get to healthcare, Mr. President, to come to the floor to speak about the National Defense Authorization Act. I see it was just delivered here to the House. I was hoping that our House colleagues would have stopped that legislation and actually made a fix to it. That is Section 373 of this year's Defense Authorization Act, which really undermines our critical commercial aviation safety, and it exposes the gaps that we saw when we had the January 29th DCA air collision. So I hope that my colleagues here will help us make changes to this section of the Defense Authorization Act. We know how important this is. The Flight 534-2 passenger families, the Lilly family, along with myself and Senator Cruz, have been trying to sound the alarm bells around the Capitol in the airspace about why we shouldn't let the military fly without this important broadcast system, so that people know when they're in the region and can translate that communication so that air traffic controllers and other aircraft in a busy airspace know when the military is there. We know what happened when a Black Hawk involved in the January 29th collision wasn't actively transmitting its location. We know what happened. We know that we have seen since then much from the NTSB. In fact, tonight, a letter from the National Transportation Safety Board is expressing their strong opposition to the inclusion of Section 737 in the National Defense Authorization Act. It basically is saying that it significantly reduces the safety of the airspace around Reagan Washington National Airport by allowing the Secretary of the Military Department to operate transmitting its missions to the DC airspace in a manner that is basically how we got into the collision to begin with, basically with it not transmitting. So I don't know why we have to have a letter from the NTSB telling us what we're doing in the National Defense Authorization Act is making the airspace less safe. I don't even know how this got in the bill, because I guarantee you Senator Cruz and I didn't approve of this being in the bill. I'm pretty sure my colleagues in the House, Congressman Larson and Graves, didn't approve of this being in the bill. So how is it that this is now in the bill that we all have to respond today, including the National Transportation Safety Administration, basically saying this language should not be there? It is so important that the families that have had to come together to support legislation that Senator Cruz and I do support had to put out their own tweet. They basically said that it doesn't fix the failed system that produced the accident in January. So the families are having to lobby. So who is not listening? Who's not listening to the ranking members of committees? Who's not listening to the NTSB? Who's not listening to the families of the victims? Who is jamming this into a bill just because they think that DOD still deserves to fly in a crowded airspace without people knowing that they are there? So I hope my colleagues will take this issue seriously. I hope my colleagues will understand that this is not the way to fix legislation. I mentioned my colleague, Senator Cruz and I, have passed the Rotor Act out of committee, important legislation that does fix the problem, that is endorsed by the families, that is endorsed by the NTSB, that is endorsed by other groups. And yet we couldn't get that into this legislation, but yet somehow mysteriously, without anybody knowing how or why, this language is stuck into this bill. Listen to the Lilly family who lost their son, First Officer Sam Lilly, in the crash. They recognize this provision creates another loophole and stated, quote, "Safety that depends on exemptions cannot be the foundation of securing an airspace system," end quote. So not only does this provision fail to rein in the training flights properly, it will keep making it more difficult for commercial aircraft to see military training flights flying so close to the flights around DCA. Now, I will say it's astounding to me that in this last big bill, other stuff was stuck in here. My colleague from the Commerce Committee might realize that some of our colleagues wanted to be able to sue the federal government because the Department of Justice had looked at their phone records. Have we struck that provision? I'm pretty sure these families who've lost loved ones would like to be able to sue the federal government, the DOD, or the FAA, who basically make it hard to have safety provisions and have somebody in the dark of night put another exemption in for DOD, which is what caused the accident in the first place. So we don't allow these families to have any recourse with the government, but we're still here with a provision that some senators thought was important enough that they get off, basically sue the government for millions of dollars. And yet this kind of behavior, that this makes it more dangerous for the flying public, and they get no recourse. We don't even know who stuck it in. People should be asking, who stuck in this language? Who's standing by it? Who's committed to it? Who thinks it's a good idea? Because none of the safety advocates think that it's a good idea. So, Mr. President, I hope my colleagues will be as outraged as I am over this provision, outraged along with the families, with the transportation NTSB administrator, and help us fight this issue. Now, Mr. President, I rise today to urge my colleagues to continue to work on the affordable care issues that are facing our nation. We know that we have to work together to address the Affordable Care Act, and that the system needs to continue to have updates. We know that in this time period, since 2010, the uninsured rate in the United States was a staggering 18.2%. After the enactment of the ACA, which significantly expanded coverage, around 45 million Americans had access to either Medicaid or the ACA plans. And that is that we actually cut by more than half the uninsured rate to an all-time low in 2023 of 7%. Now, in my home state, we took advantage of the Affordable Care Act and further drove the uninsured rate down to 4%, significantly reducing hospitals and providers' financial burden and providing uncompensated care. So, you know, there's much been said about these individual provisions in the Affordable Care Act on the exchange. But the bottom line is that ability for the Affordable Care Act to drive the uninsured rate in half to an all-time low of 7% and 4% in my state is a great example of what it did to help lower costs across the whole system. There are still some challenges on the exchange, and there are more affordable ways to deal with that population on the exchange. I authored one of them called the Basic Health Plan. It's now working in 4 states and soon to be the District of Columbia. And that is definitely thousands of dollars cheaper per year than what you can buy on the exchange. And I would encourage all of us to look at that as a solution for the future. But according to a report from the Commonwealth Fund, states that expanded Medicaid through the Affordable Care Act saw an average 40% decrease in uncompensated care. The Center for Budget and Policy, basically, as this chart shows, found that the Affordable Care Act reduced uncompensated care costs by more than $6 billion in expansion states. Just imagine, reduce the cost by $6 billion by just covering people and not having this tragedy of uncompensated care. Literally, I've had hospitals tell me that one person can cost millions of dollars by just constantly coming to the hospital. If they would have just had health care, had insurance, their costs would have been covered instead of the constant uncompensated care costs. So the real challenge here is that since the passage of the ACAs, our colleagues on the other side of the aisle, the Republicans, have been trying to repeal this bill that cut the uninsured rate in half, provided care that was affordable in the Medicaid expansion, and covered other things as in the basic plan. They tried to repeal all that 70 times. 70 times, okay? So I'm not surprised that we're days away from a vote, and yet they're still not coming together to show us how they're going to reduce healthcare costs. We need to keep covering people because covering people is a way to help reduce costs. As I mentioned, the expansion of the basic health plan is one way to lower those costs. But I know that in this last big bill passed by my colleagues, they basically cut $1 trillion from the healthcare system, taking away health insurance from 15 million Americans, raising the healthcare cost and basically creating challenges. I know in one Seattle Times headline, basically Washington healthcare insurers fret as the ACA subsidies remain in limbo. That's because people are following what we're doing, or I should say not doing, and they're trying to understand where they're going to get affordable insurance. I heard from a woman in Spokane. She has a chronic lung disease and recently fractured her knee. Her premium has gone from $723 per month to $2,180 per month. Her only option, a plan with less coverage, has a lower premium, but makes her liable for 30% of all hospital and ER payments, making the plan incredibly risky. She's just a year and a half away from qualifying for Medicare, but these massive costs mean her and her husband will have to cut back on groceries and other expenses. I heard from another constituent in Clark County. She works 3 jobs, but none of them provide health care. Because of the expiring subsidies, the cost of her basic bronze plan has doubled from $1,050 per month with a deductible of $9,000. She's going to an occupational therapy provider for arthritis, but when she got the $1,000 cost estimate, she canceled. Another constituent from Long Beach, Washington, told me her son has mental health issues and she helps pay for his housing. But if her premiums go up, she will have to make the difficult decision about getting care for her son or a roof over their head or this issue of premiums. We know the costs are rising for other things like groceries, prescription drugs, and other necessities. So health insurance is going to push people off of a financial stability. If Congress doesn't extend the expiring ACA credits, an estimated 5 million Americans, 80,000 Washingtonians will drop insurance altogether, creating more uncompensated care. And as I said in the beginning, passing the Affordable Care Act, cutting the uninsured rate in half was a huge milestone beyond saving $6 billion, but making the system healthier and less expensive. So why do my colleagues on the other side of the aisle not understand that we can't just cut in the big, beautiful bill these important healthcare programs? We can't try to repeal the ACA 70 times and then all of a sudden believe that you can just cut people off of the ACA program without trying to provide a more cost-effective solution. I know my colleagues Crapo and Cassidy are trying. My guess is they would like to get a solution here. I thought we should have done it before we opened the government back up because we had the optimal period of time where people were listening to real solutions. Now we've kind of divided into our corners. I am very worried that we are not going to get this done when in reality we could. We're making things more expensive when we don't need to. Without the extension, millions of Americans will simply choose not to purchase the coverage, and the premiums will, on average, double for the remaining people on the exchange. So that meager $1,000 to $1,500 provided by my colleagues, Senators Cassidy and Crapo, in health savings account is nowhere close to covering the out-of-pocket deductible of a $7,000 typical associated plan with the health savings accounts. So I talked to them before. I wanted to work with them in earnest. I thought it was some novelty in certain places like Indiana that was worth exploring. But we cannot take millions of people off of the Affordable Care plan and then say that you're going to give them $1,000 when we know that their out-of-pocket expenses are going to be $7,000. So, as we've all suggested, fix this program, particularly for the very small 5 or 6% that are at the very high income level. Figure out a plan that is more cost-effective than what we are providing today, and I am sure we can provide a solution for the American people. We know now that the cost of hospitalization by people like my constituent in Spokane with chronic conditions like lung cancer or other issues are really worrying the American people. We know that even as we try to get a solution, that people are focusing on abortion restrictions, as if those people in the Affordable Care Act part of the exchange we're talking about are people that were part of this issue. So literally, our colleagues on the other side who tried to say, let's cut the Affordable Care Act 70 times, put in decimating language in the big, beautiful bill, are also saying the only way I'm going to solve this problem for you is if you change the law and try to put more restrictive reproductive rights into statute. So we can do better, Mr. President, than this. We can focus on finding bipartisan solutions. We can focus on working together as members of the Finance Committee and actually get something done. But time is running out. I know that we want to get something done, but this Finance Committee has, the full committee met in open markup for 7 days of debating and amending legislation. And that is what it takes to get our colleagues in order. I want us to understand what legislating really looks like. We know that when we had the COVID pandemic, we all came together and created a solution to help the economy keep going, to help the airline industry keep going, to help small businesses. We could have done more. We obviously had differences of opinion about how much to do, but we worked in a bipartisan fashion. So now, as we face this crisis where Americans are losing their health insurance, people have retreated to partisan corners, again, on things like choice and things like cutting people off of health insurance instead of working on solutions that really lower costs. I ask my colleagues, let's work on solutions so that we will have something for Americans. Otherwise, beginning January 1st, which is not that far from now, Americans are going to have less insurance. They're going to have more costs, and many of them are going to be facing healthcare crisis without the aid and help of insurance to get them through it. I hope we can do better than that. I hope that we can learn from the fact that expanding affordable health insurance to Americans is a winning concept. It's worth achieving. I hope our colleagues will try to achieve it in the next day. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.
The Senator from Massachusetts.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, today I rise in support of the legislation that is going to be considered here on the Senate floor tomorrow to extend the Affordable Care Act enhanced premium tax credits so that we can lower the health care costs for 22 million Americans. Those Americans get that protection today. If the Republicans do not vote for that protection to be continued tomorrow, then 22 million Americans and their families are going to see a dramatic rise in their health care bills beginning the end of this year. This threat is looming for those families. It's 22 million Americans. By the way, it's 10 million Americans who either own small businesses or work in small businesses. So we're talking about Main Street, America. 10 million of the 22 million people actually work for small businesses in America. So for them, this is going to be a bill that they're going to be receiving in the mail. And we're talking Main Street America. We're talking Republicans turning Main Street into Pain Street for 10 million small business employees or owners. And tomorrow is the Republicans' opportunity not to see this dramatic rise, this skyrocketing price be passed on to them. And it's going to be devastating to them. These are not rich people. These small business workers, owners, no, they go week to week. They go month to month. These aren't big business people. These are small business. They're Main Street people. And they're about to get crushed. And that's the vote that the Republicans are going to cast tomorrow. It's going to lead to a $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $10,000 a year increase in the premiums that they have to pay for the coverage for their families. It is going to be devastating to those families. And the very fact, Mr. President, that President Trump and the Republicans are only just allowing a vote on continuing these critical tax credits just 2 weeks before all these families have to make their decision. It's only 2 weeks to go. And then they got to send a check in to get the coverage for January 1st. So the Republicans have waited until 2 weeks left to go. In Massachusetts, it's December 23rd. That's the last day. And people have to send in the check to cover. It's 2 days before Christmas. Can you imagine families, 22 million families, all trying to figure out how they're going to write that check for a dramatic increase in their health care 2 days before Christmas? That's what the Republicans are setting up across our country. 22 million Christmases who are all going to have this financial bomb go off on their kitchen table. It's going to make it harder to buy presents. It's going to make it harder for these families to actually plan for 2026. And it's all because these Republicans are unwilling to do it. And honestly, it just shows how unserious the Republicans are about addressing affordability for families at the kitchen table. The cost of living in this country is skyrocketing. And it's not just the healthcare bill for these 22 million people. Healthcare across the country is skyrocketing, just skyrocketing. And instead of trying to deal with it, the Republicans are doing nothing to solve the problem. And it's no surprise because the Republicans have harbored an ancient animosity towards all of these federal health care programs. The Republicans voted no on Social Security in 1935. They voted no on Medicare. They voted no on Medicaid. They voted no on the Affordable Care Act. Today, they're trying to destroy the vaccine regime that we have in our country. They're withholding by the billions research on cancer and Alzheimer's and diabetes and Parkinson's and other diseases that need more research. They're pulling back the funding for that. That's what they're leaving as a legacy for families this Christmas in our country. Because ultimately, health is the first wealth. That's what Ralph Waldo Emerson, the great Massachusetts poet, said. And that's what the Republicans are now trying to loot on behalf of their billionaire buddies, because all the money just going to be shuffled off to billionaires. So this is, without question, just a continuation of their efforts, because they tried to stop Medicare, they tried to stop Social Security, they failed to kill the Affordable Care Act, and now they're trying to eliminate the tax credits that help people afford their health insurance. In Massachusetts, for example, it's 60,000 small businesses and their owners who rely on these tax credits to afford health insurance for themselves and their families. Now, here's what Trump says. Trump says affordability is a hoax. He's saying to these families, what you're now saying is a hoax. He's called affordability a con job. But the only hoax, the only con job is Trump and the Republicans repeatedly promising a cheaper alternative to the Affordable Care Act and instead offering nothing, absolutely nothing. That's where they've been. The Affordable Care Act went on the books in 2010. For 15 years, they have been promising that they would have an alternative. There used to be a television show, Perry Mason, and he was a lawyer. He always had very difficult cases. And in the final 5 minutes of each one of the shows, Della Street, his great associate, she would show up with the critical evidence that would then solve the case. Well, it's been 15 years, and we've been waiting for the Republican Della Street to show up with the paper, with the document that's going to solve this healthcare crisis that the Republicans with crocodile tears year after year say that they care so much about. And they're not going to show up with a plan. There's a great play, Waiting for Godot. And of course, at the end of Waiting for Godot, Godot never shows up. And this healthcare solution that the Republicans have been promising for 15 years, it's not going to show up tomorrow. And as a result, 22 million Americans are going to lose their coverage. They're going to have to pay exorbitantly higher prices for the healthcare coverage than they do have to pay today. So this week, Trump, in a self-grading, exercise, he graded his economy an A+++++. That's 5 pluses that Donald Trump gave himself. But I think most Americans right now, they're giving him an F. Why? I'll tell you very simply. The cost of groceries is up. The cost of electricity is way up. The cost of housing is way up. And the cost of healthcare, because of Republicans, is way up. And they're even going to complicate it more tomorrow. They're going to have their own scarlet letter for the next year that they're going to have to walk around with, an H, a healthcare, on their forehead. They're just going to be branding themselves as opposed to providing the healthcare for all of these hard-working families across our country. And when the backbone of our economy, small businesses, can no longer afford their premiums, they will make tough decisions about hiring, about growing, or even closing their doors for good, turning, again, main streets all across our country into pain streets. And it's all going to be in the mail in just the next 2 weeks, right before Christmas. To me, it's almost unimaginable. It takes Scrooge and it gives a whole new meaning to it in terms of what they are about to deliver as coal in the stockings of 22 million American families. They were expecting a lot more, and that's not what they are about to receive. And so, despite the fact that these costs are going up under the Trump administration, despite the fact that they plundered $1 trillion from Medicaid just back in July to give a tax break to CEO billionaires, despite the fact that reckless tariffs are decimating our small businesses to the tune of $38 billion a year, somehow OMB Director Russell Vought wants to fund the Department of Defense at more than $1 trillion. Pete Hegseth declared it would be the Defense Department's first $1 trillion budget. They're so proud.